Alright guys, Joe Rachel here. I wanted to make this video for quite a while. And I think it's important because there's a lot of conspiracy believers out there, and I understand. I'm a conspiracy guy by nature. I know that there's things happening in the world that are being manipulated against us. I understand that. I get that, and but as I have experienced this whole cancer journey and the medical system and the treatments and what I've learned, I just wanted to share with you and try to explain what I believe many people are wrong and they're thinking about. And I just want to share. So, what we're going to do is we're going to run through this. Like I said, I used to be a cancer conspiracy guy. I believed that chemo and cancer treatment had no value in the world, and this was a system that was only there to kill people off and turn a profit. And I really did believe that. And I think that was my downfall for quite a while. But since being a cancer patient and seeing this system from the inside, my opinion has changed. And I've experienced things, I've gotten more knowledge, and I have a little bit better understanding about the whole process and the system. And I wanted to bring this, and I wanted to bring it in a way that was concise. I didn't want to leave any parts out, so I made this little slideshow just to kind of keep me on track so I could share. And a little bit about my story. I guess what's important is the Bruce Lasniak story, and you can watch that video in my playlist. That really set the tone for who I was. And so when I was a kid, Bruce was my mother's boyfriend, and he got lymphoma. And as a kid, I spent time worrying that I would get lymphoma, and go figure, I have lymphoma. So I'm not sure how that works, if it's completely coincidence, or if this is the attack by the enemy on specifically on me to really hit home with me or what. But so that shaped me into, I seen him go through all the different things. None of it was good, and the treatment was far more rudimentary back in those days. And so I really developed this position and this character and this understanding, I should say, that I really hated chemo, thought it was complete death in a liquid form, and that it really helped nobody. And I really developed this and did research. God, this has been in the back of my mind for ever since I was a little kid, 10 years old. And later in life, I did a lot of researching on holistic and naturopath cancer treatments and procedures. And basically, it shaped me and molded me into a person who came to the final conclusion that cancer had no value, or chemotherapy, I should say, had no value, and that it was not good for you and there could be no benefit from it. So that's a little bit about who I am. And, the change basically came when I seen this system for myself with my own eyes and did a little bit more research and then became a little bit more educated on the whole thing. So up front, there's a few things I'm not saying. I'm not saying chemo is good for you in any way. I'm not saying chemo is the best treatment available. And I do believe that there is something better that Big Pharma is more than likely hiding. And as I've stated in other videos, I do think that there's not just one cure for cancer, but I think there's many, many different things that work and would cure cancer. And I have a more concise idea of what that is now after reading the book that I'll discuss a little bit later in this video. So by the end of this video, I'll explain why I believe chemo has value. And I think chemo does have value today, and it's the only option for the majority. And I learned this from my naturopath doctor before I received the treatment, and it's 100% true. And I want to discuss that a little bit more later. There's also been statistics that I've seen on the internet and different other venues, mostly internet. Let's be honest. There are memes going around on Facebook, and they say this cancer kills half the people, and I do believe that's true. But I think there's a reason why, and I think it's important to understand why. And so, out of those people, who is being killed and why? And like I said, there is a group that's falling victim and giving chemo a bad rap, if you want to look at it that way. Because I do believe, especially now after I read said book that I'm going to get into a little later, that it's the way chemo is administered that seems to be the problem. Also, the fact that there's other components missing in the fight, the cancer fight. So I'll also reveal this shortly by the end of the video. Now, I'm obviously not saying that natural eating is bad, right? Now, I believe naturally eating is good for you and should be adapted, and you should really watch what you eat, especially if you're battling this cancer. And the oncologist, basically, I learned firsthand by my oncologist, he says that, where's the data? If it works, how come everyone isn't doing that? And he loves to say that about anything I bring up. Supplements, diets, different treatments, different things. Anything you would bring up that's not the conventional method, he'll say, well, where's the data for that? So they've been trained, and I found out also from this book I'm going to discuss shortly in a bit, that this is the common thread, and this is the way that most of the oncologists are going to reference and talk about and react when you discuss anything natural. But we'll discuss that a little bit more later. It's good to eat healthy, watch what you put in your body, there's no question about that. And I know from experience that some are too far gone for a natural approach to work all by itself. Once the cancer is ruling your body, it's really, you could look at natural eating as more of a preventative measure. And I'm not saying that it doesn't work. There are people out there in the web that have done this and they have got full reversal. But what I'm saying is, for everybody, that's not the case. And I already know that to be true. I've met people now, many of them, that did what I did and spent a good amount of time up front trying to heal their cancer naturally, and it didn't work for them. And that's not to give you a discouraging outlook. That's to bring to light that there's another approach that is more successful that we'll talk about. So here's the problem with being a cancer conspiracy guy. Now, as I was, I didn't ask these questions. There are questions that are not being asked by the guy or the girl who's a militant, naturalist, holistic only type of idealist when it comes to cancer. And there's many questions that need to be asked in order to understand if modern day treatment has value. And the cancer conspiracy group doesn't know to ask these questions, and I know for a fact because I was one of them. So some of the questions that I think are really fundamental: what type of cancer does the patient have? They're not even close to the same. And if you research this, you're going to find out there's many different kinds of cancers. In the past, I thought there was one really type of cancer, and the different names, excuse me, the different names for the cancers were only describing maybe where in the body it was, or, that type of thing. I really didn't think that cancer was so particularly different, and that was something that I learned as I've been researching, and I've gotten to really understand how this disease works and its many facets. It's really an amazing disease that has a life of its own, and you really need to study what type of cancer you might have, what are its metabolic pathways, how can you attack it, and what you can do for yourself to rid the body of cancer, to give yourself the best shot to be healed. So that's one question. The other questions that I've learned to ask here now are, what protocols being used? There are many protocols. There's hundreds of medications. Now I shouldn't say hundreds. Let's be realistic and let's just say there are many kinds of medications that you can, or the doctors will use to fight your different types of cancer. Some medications attack the cancer in this form by blocking this enzyme or this protein or this ability the cancer has, and some will work in a completely different way. And so there's really science behind, excuse me, the medications, how they work, what's administered for what type of cancer. And I never knew that. So I didn't know there was different kinds of cancers. I didn't know there was different kinds of medications for different types of cancers. I just thought there was one thing and we're all dealing with the same thing, and I thought chemotherapy was worthless, but now I know it's quite a bit more scientific than that, and there is some value in it and it can be used properly. But here's another question. What stage is the patient at? Are they so far gone? Do they have a type of cancer that doesn't respond to chemotherapy? Or what do they have? Like, I'm lucky enough to have lymphoma, which has one of the best, is one of the most treatable forms of cancer. So what stage is the patient at? Are there organs involved? If you have cancer and it's stage 4 and you have it's metastasized into your liver and your lungs and, other organs, you may be at a stage where nothing's going to work. And we all hear, or I should say, no conventional treatment the way it's administered today is going to work. So your oncologist might send you home and say, you got this long to live, which luckily my oncologist has a reputation for never giving up. And so I won't be hearing those words, nor will any of his patients be hearing those words. And that's a great thing, because that gives people hope, and it keeps their frame of mind in a positive outlook sort of aspect, right? So those are some questions to be asked, and we'll get a little further into this conversation. But how good is the doctor? Is he prescribing the proper treatments? Is he prescribing the proper medications? Now, what I've learned is there's a ton of medications, right? There's also medications that can reduce or minimize or completely eliminate some of the symptoms which I'm experiencing. So that's a very important thing, is the doctor prescribing the right and proper, most effective treatment. And he has to be a man that is, or a woman that is really has their mind in they need to be taking this serious, reading the research papers, looking at the pulse of cancer treatment out there, seeing what works. They can't be isolated and kind of just doing what they think is good, or, doing it improperly, right? They need to be a student of the game, and they need to be really properly administering the treatment. Here's another question. Is it too strong? Does it attack the disease properly? Is there a protocol that works for that type of cancer? And I would say yes. There are completely different protocols for every type of cancer, like what I'm going through. I'm doing our EPOC as far as the treatment protocol that describes the chemotherapy drugs that I'm using. And then I have an array of medications that the doctor gave me to work on the symptoms themselves. Here's another question, right? Is there malpractice involved? There are a lot of doctors out there that are not doing a good job, and they're not students of the game, and they're not giving the best sort of treatment for every patient. We know there's bad, crummy doctors out there that are out for money, and they're not studying, and they're not treating people right, and they're not administering properly, and there's all that stuff to be dealt with, right? Is the patient too far gone for the treatment being described? I touched a little bit on that already. Are they stage 4 with metastases all over the body? And maybe they have one of these type of cancers that doesn't respond at all to any chemotherapy. But yet people, are dealing with it and they're doing chemotherapy. Is it for the money? What's the reason behind that? Today's treatment is a controlled science. I've seen it. Could it be better? Yes. Could it be more effective? Yes. Are they hiding something? I believe so. It's not your doctor. It's not the nurse. It's not the nurses. They are working with what they've been given and they're using the knowledge that they've been taught. But all the information is coming down from Big Pharma and they're controlling the treatments and what is, being taught to the students in the medical schools. So you better have some kind of understanding about all this. When I was a cancer conspiracy guy, I didn't know about these questions. I didn't know to ask these questions. And that's very vital that you have all this knowledge, because I'm going to get into it later why this is valuable. Belief that all natural treatment will work for everyone. Will natural treatment work for everyone? No, it will not. It depends on what stage, and I believe the natural treatment is first and foremost more valuable on the preventative side. Excuse me, my voice is getting dried out here, but so on the preventative side, it's excellent. Early in the cancer, diagnosis or in the early stages, I think it's super valuable. As you progress and cancer takes over the body, there is less and less effectiveness against the cancer from the natural protocol. Then you need more help and you need some big guns. Is there data supporting that notion that natural treatment will work for everyone? There's not. There isn't. And I've met a bunch of people. I'm now aware of many, many people that have tried natural by itself and didn't have any luck. So how many people can you find that have beat cancer naturally versus by the conventional medical model? Now I will add and I will admit that there aren't that many people that that you can find that have survived cancer, but there's even less that you can find in your local area or through your 6 degrees of separation, we'll say, of people that have beat cancer naturally. It's very few and far between that you're going to find. Yeah, there's a good number of people on the internet that claim to have, and I believe that they have had excellent results. But the problem is, then they go and they sort of profess what they went through, and then they act like and teach and insist that system is going to work for everybody, for every kind of cancer, and that's just not true. It's just not true. And there's bigger guns and there's more help that you can add to the war that you're in, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Does eating healthy during chemo even matter? That's a question that I ask myself. At this point, I do believe that every time you put one foot forward as far as eating healthy and trying to do the right things for your body, because let's face it, if you're eating a bunch of food that has a bunch of chemicals in it and drinking a bunch of water that's chemicals, going out and breathing the air that has chemicals in it, living in an area where there's some kind of pollution or some kind of outside force that will, develop, aid, or cause cancer, that matters. And you want to eliminate those things if you're in treatment, right? So I do believe eating healthy does matter. Is the patient absorbing nutrients properly? What's their gut health like? Okay? You can actually eat healthy and not get good results because your absorption is improper or not barely anything. So you're not taking up nutrients from the gut and you're not getting the benefit that you need from the food that you would be eating that should be helping you. These are all things that you need to consider and think about. And I didn't think about this stuff before. So the other thing that the cancer conspiracy group really leans upon is that cancer is your fault. Is cancer your fault? The cancer conspiracy group believes this. I was one of them. And really just the outlook is like, you find out somebody has cancer and immediately you start to judge. You start to evaluate them, and you really think in the back of your head that they caused their cancer by their lifestyle. And there's many outside forces that are involved, as I just discussed here, that could be, the cause or the reasoning behind why you or someone else has cancer. So I don't believe it is your fault. I used to believe and think that way, but now I know a little bit better because I know a little bit more. Weight, hormones, and the unhealthy state. We discussed that before already. But the food, and I apologize for that. My prescription's ready. So the food is really an important factor. And it affects the chemicals, the preservatives, affects your weight. It affects your glands and your hormones and the natural process of the body. And it really is helping people to be put into an unhealthy state. So that's the toxins and the outside influence. You can eat healthy and avoid as much toxins as possible and still end up with cancer. It happened to me. I ate clean and healthy for 10 years, did all the things I thought as part of my research, and did all the things I thought were going to help me, and in the end, I still got cancer. So, the other question is, does chemo make cancer come back, or is it a lifestyle and toxins? And I now know, because of the book I'm just going to discuss here shortly, that chemotherapy, it's not that it causes cancer to come back. It allows it to come back, and we'll discuss that a little bit more here shortly. Who is cancer treatment killing? This is the big question now. I made that statement earlier, that cancer is killing 50% of the people, right? Who's it killing? Well, it's killing the elderly, for sure. I see them in the infusion center, and I know they're in the hospital. They're very frail, very sickly. Many of them are at very late stage in the game, and they're definitely appear to be too far gone for the amazingly difficult time that they're going to have due to chemotherapy. So I do believe that there are people that are too far gone, stage 4, metastasized, and they are not going to respond well to the chemo, right? So we'll discuss a little bit about why I think they're even doing chemotherapy in the first place. Those that have a cancer that doesn't respond to chemo, yet they're having treatment, we'll discuss that. Those losing the mental battle, so super important. You got to be strong upstairs. You have to be certain that you're going to fight. You're going to see it through. You're going to do all that you can possibly do to beat this. So the mental battle is a huge part. I see people in the cancer groups on Facebook, and they are so negative, and they are so convinced they're going to die. And I've seen this before. You're literally giving up the ghost. You're literally destroying yourself with that thought process. And that is very big. And it's something you personally can work on. So we can discuss that more. Now, the reason natural treatment will not work for everybody is this. And I've been building up to this. And I learned this from a naturopath doctor. Patient compliance. And I can tell you firsthand that this affected me. And what does that mean? That means that the people that could benefit from the natural protocols are not able to do it. And the one reason that I have a hard time is because people are food addicts. they can't fully comply with the natural protocol, and that's the hard reality. And I also suffered from lack of discipline in implementing the natural protocol to its successful conclusion, let's just say. Now, I don't even know if the natural protocol would have fully helped me. I want to say that it would have. It didn't, but I know that I didn't comply as good or as disciplined as I should have. And also, the natural treatment is time consuming. It's literally a full-time job. So if you're the person who's busy, a parent, a job, a really demanding life, it's very, very difficult to implement the natural procedures. This is why the big reason that I think the natural protocol approach isn't working for everybody, and I don't think it can, is because so many people are so weak in the mind, and the food has caused such large food addiction, and it's such a struggle to try to give up the things that you love in order to properly administer this natural protocol and make it successful. So here's what we're getting to. The book I've been discussing or referencing to and leading up to here, and this isn't a book report. This is really about the dynamics of being a cancer conspiracy person and thinking natural only will work, or on the other side of that, there's people that literally think that all that natural stuff or anything outside of the conventional approach is hogwash or just myth and fable and fairy tales, which I don't believe either. So there's those two opposing camps, and my voice is really starting to go here. But this book, How to Starve Cancer by Jane McLeland, she has a Facebook group. This book and its information will prove to be the future of cancer treatment. A modified, conventional approach. So what that means is, in the book she explains that the high dose chemotherapy is not as effective as it could be if it was low dose and combined with a holistic approach and also the off-label repurposed drugs. That is to say that the drugs that are used for other things other than cancer, so for instance, like there's some statins, there's some different diabetic drugs, there's different drugs out there that have a different purpose, yet they've been found in studies to have a great effect on chemotherapy, or I should say on cancer, I apologize. So this three-prong approach is what is described in this book, and there's tons of reference, tons of study. And in the groups, you can find that many late-stage cancer patients are reversing their cancer and living. This defies being sent home with 6 months to live, right? You can get this book on Amazon. There's a couple books named the same thing, so make sure you look for Jane McLeland as the author. Really a fantastic read, and I think that this is going to be a huge game changer. People they desire to have the truth, and the truth is being uncovered, and people are starting to demand that their oncologists and the cancer community, the medical establishment in general, starts to look at this and implement these successful treatments. And let's just face it, cancer treatment and cancer in general is a big business. Big Pharma has much to lose from any sort of more successful treatment being brought to the forefront. They don't want that. They don't want that. And you would most people can't imagine that there are people that are that greedy where they would want to make money off somebody's loved one dying. But the reality is it's true, right? The same people probably would have a hard time imagining that somebody could walk into a school with a gun and start killing other human beings. But you see this, right? And that's far more evil, far more diabolic than this simple system of greed and cancer treatment controlling and suppressing that we're seeing by big pharma and the system involved with cancer treatment. So that's just a fact of the matter. So that's just to say, to wrap up this video, guys, as I was one of these cancer treatment Nazis, sort of a conspiracy guy giving no credit to the conventional system, if you would have told me about off-label drugs, when I was one of these natural-only guys, I would have just said, no, those are chemicals and they're toxic and that's just going to destroy the body. But we have a lot of examples of short-term medical, or I should say short-term consumption of drugs doing a lot of benefit for a lot of people. A lot of people have aspirin in their cupboards. A lot of people have different things that they perceive as harmless, but they're drugs, they're chemicals, they're synthetic versions of something else that has value and works. And so my whole outlook and my whole aspect of the way I think about this treatment and the drugs and the chemicals and even chemotherapy, I know more people now that have been healed or put into remission, I should say, by chemotherapy in the conventional model. Yes, a lot of people are dying, but there are a lot of people that are fighting, that have received treatment, and that are doing well. And you can't argue with that. You can't say that chemotherapy is bad for everybody when there are people that have been put into remission by it. And what I believe in and what I would suggest is that the way that it's administered, more along the lines of what's in this book, are what we need to see in the world today. So, I just want people to think about what their position is and consider. And God forbid that you get put into my shoes where you have to find out firsthand that your natural approach isn't the end all be all that you think it is, that your, faith in the conventional model isn't the end all be all to curing and reversing cancer, that there is a better system and a better way out there that's a hybrid system that involves all these three different aspects: the modified conventional, the holistic, and the off-label, off-patent drugs that are out there that can be repurposed. Just a little side note before I go, the drug companies have to spend millions and billions to get these drugs repurposed. They have to go before the FDA, who is fully intertwined with Big Pharma. They have to spend a lot of money to get these drugs repurposed, and they're not patentable, which means any other drug company, once they find out about the success of these drugs, can make their own generic version, and there's no money to be made. So who's going to spend millions and billions to repurpose these drugs when there's no money to be made? And that's the problem with the system, is that it's about money. It's about greed, and it's corrupted by people that are really, honestly, biblically, they have the love of money, and the love of money is the root of all evil. So guys, I love you. Remember, there is hope. It's not the end. Get educated, open your mind, and learn as much as you can, and you or your loved one can do far better and get the results that you're looking for. So be blessed. Love ya. There is hope. It's not the end. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.